The day after my dream girl confessed her feelings for me, I time-traveled 10 years into the future. The moment I opened my eyes, a little kid with huge eyes was shyly calling me Dad. A little later, in a dusty storage room, I found our wedding photo. I never would have guessed the bride in the picture was her. I woke up and found I jumped 10 years into the future. I was lying in a strange bed. Just as I was totally lost and confused, a tiny figure darted in through the door. I immediately flopped back down and pretended to still be asleep. The footsteps got closer, and then a soft little hand rested on my forehead. A child's innocent voice chattered on and on about what he'd been eating and playing with recently. Just as I was trying to figure out my relationship with this kid, his next sentence startled my eyes wide open. He said, "Daddy, you've been sick for days. Why aren't you waking up? I know you don't like Max, but Max really misses you. Please wake up, Daddy." Daddy? This kid called me Daddy. My eyes shot open. I saw a cute little boy with big eyes and a small mouth staring at me in terror. Before I could say anything, the kid scrambled away and was gone. Oh my God! Just last night, I'd finally accepted my dream girl's confession, and I wake up to a kid this big. After the boy ran off, I immediately grabbed my phone to call my best friend, Gideon. I had no idea what I'd been through these last 10 years, but my phone was practically empty. All my old friends had vanished from my contacts. The phone rang a few times before Gideon picked up. "What do you want?" His voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. I scratched my cheek, his stoic tone leaving me speechless. Seeing that I wasn't talking, Gideon was the one who got agitated. "Leo, say something. Didn't you say you'd never contact me again? Geez, what the hell did I do over the past decade?" I thought for a moment and said, "Gideon, I know you're the cool, silent type, but cut it out for a sec. I just want to ask you, who's my wife?" That was the only thing I cared about right now. Gideon was silent for a moment. "Leo, did you forget to take your meds today?" Huh? The 10 years later Gideon had learned to be passive-aggressive. "I'm dead serious. Did you forget your meds? Whatever, just wait at home. I'm in line for a COVID test. I'll come find you when I'm done." Gideon sounded pretty serious. Maybe I hadn't time-traveled. Maybe I was just sick. And what the heck was a COVID test? And why was there a line? Just as I hung up, a woman who looked like a housekeeper knocked on the door, carefully asking if I was feeling better and if I wanted something to eat. "Looks like my wife, whoever she is pretty loaded." I nodded, and soon a spread of exquisite dishes was laid out in front of me. I never thought that 10 years later I'd be living the life I'd always dreamed of. I tried to subtly ask about my wife. The housekeeper looked a little surprised and only said that my wife was on a business trip and wouldn't be back until next month. That was good news. By the time she got back, I'd probably have adjusted to the situation. I picked up my chopsticks and started digging in. I had to admit, everything was my favorite. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the little kid peeking around the door. Realizing this might be my son, my eyes lit up. I waved him over. "Hey kid, come here." He flinched and walked timidly to the bedside. Why does this kid seem so scared of me? Don't tell me I married into some rich family and became the kid's stepdad. I scratched my head and tried to sound as friendly as possible. "Hey there, little guy. What's your name? How old are you?" The kid's chubby little face crumpled with hurt, as if he couldn't understand how a dad wouldn't remember his own son's name. "Daddy, my name is Max Quinn. Everyone calls me Max. I'm 4.5. I kept going. "Max, let me quiz you. What's your mommy's name?" "My mommy's name is Max." "There you are. It's time to go downstairs for your lessons. Don't bother the master while he's resting." The housekeeper, who had suddenly appeared at the door, cut Max off. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I lost track of him. I'll take him downstairs right now." The housekeeper nervously came over and pulled Max away. I was pretty confused but could only nod. Ever since I woke up, this housekeeper's attitude had been strange, like I was some kind of monster. Since I couldn't find out my wife's name, I decided to look for clues myself. The bedroom was luxuriously decorated, but there were no wedding photos and no signs of another woman living here. Could this be one of those legendary wives who just sends money every month but never comes home? When I walked out of the room, I realized I was in a two-story house. Downstairs, Max was sitting quietly by the French doors, playing with a puzzle. Sunlight streamed in, and with his long eyelashes cast down, he looked like such a good little boy. My heart completely melted. I zipped over to him in a flash, which made him jump. "Hey, buddy, whatcha playing? Dad will play with you." Little Max's eyes went wide, and he immediately stood up straight as a board, mumbling, "Daddy." I pulled him over and planted a big kiss on his pale little cheek. He touched his face, looking pleasantly surprised. Seeing his reaction, I started to guess that the 10 years later me probably wasn't very fond of this child. Luckily, Max was young and didn't hold a grudge. After I played with him for a bit, he happily started showing me his puzzle. "Buddy, is a puzzle all you have to play with? A kid his age should have tons of toys." Max glanced at me cautiously. "Daddy said my other toys were too noisy and it made you angry." Great. The 10 years later me really did have issues. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Gideon. When Gideon walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Was this really my quiet, slender best friend? Not only did he have a sharp buzz cut, but he was also built like a tank, with a mature, intense look in his eyes. I widened my eyes dramatically. "Who are you, handsome?" Gideon rolled his eyes at me. Max, however, seemed to know him well, running right up to him and calling out, "Uncle Gideon." Gideon ruffled Max's hair and said to me, "Let's go upstairs to talk." I quickly led him back to the bedroom and, before he could speak, spilled the whole story. After listening, Gideon frowned and looked me over before asking the million-dollar question. "How do you know you time-traveled and didn't just get amnesia?" I remember my last meal before I traveled was the tomato beef stew from the school cafeteria. It was delicious, and I remember I had an exam 2 days before I traveled. I even remember the questions. If I had amnesia, there's no way I'd remember details like that for 10 years. Gideon raised an eyebrow but still didn't say anything. He knew me as well as he knew himself. I pursed my lips, embarrassed. "Okay, fine." The day before, I had just accepted Isabel's confession. Gideon's smile vanished, and he let out a cold laugh. Then he launched into the story of what happened over the last 10 years. It turns out the future me really was sick bipolar disorder. And the reason I got sick was because my ex-girlfriend, Isabel, cheated on me. Gideon said that after Isabel and I got together, she was nice to me on the surface but was secretly manipulating me the whole time. By the time he realized something was wrong with me, it was too late. Later, Isabel falsely accused Gideon of hitting on her, and in my confused state, I ended our friendship right then and there. As for me, at 27, I was dumped by Isabel. Her new boyfriend was my college roommate. I couldn't handle it and developed bipolar disorder. Holy crap, that's tragic. I rubbed my forehead and sighed. This was basically the sad first half of Leo Quinn's life. So what about my current wife? That was what I really cared about. Gideon looked at me, paused for a moment, and then said, "It's Lucy." What? In my wildest dreams, I never would have imagined I'd end up marrying Lucy. Me, Gideon, and Lucy basically grew up together. When we were kids, our families lived in the same building, and we all went to the same school. Lucy was always that legendary kid you're compared to. She was beautiful, a great student, and a genuinely good person. She helped old ladies cross the street and gave up her seat for old men. Back then, the more my parents praised her, the more annoyed I got. But as a sucker for a pretty face, I couldn't help but stare at her, often making her blush. Once I got past that bratty phase and started noticing girls, I admit, I had a bit of a crush on her. But so many guys liked her that I just stayed away. Even when she showed me a little special attention, I just chalked it up to our childhood friendship. Besides, she ended up going abroad for school later. And now Gideon was telling me that Lucy had married me. The shock was like hearing pigs could fly. In a flash, another question popped into my head. Max is 4.5, and I broke up with Isabel when I was 27, so Max is? Gideon gave me a troubled look. We weren't on speaking terms then, so I only heard things secondhand. The story goes that you and Lucy were caught in bed by Isabel. As for Max, he's Isabel's son. Back then, Isabel used the kid to blackmail Lucy, so she had no choice but to. Anyway, Max's origins are complicated. You'll have to ask Lucy about it yourself. The information overload was frying my brain. So, not only was I cheated on by my ex, but my wife has been getting blackmailed by her with a kid? The thought made me see stars. No wonder the room only showed signs of me living in it. Lucy must really despise me. But if that's the case, why did she agree to marry me? Wait a minute. If Isabel cheated on me, how could she catch me in bed with Lucy? Even if I was capable of that, Lucy just isn't that kind of person. Gideon said, I don't know the specifics. It seems like Isabel tried to break up with you first, but you refused. Then she caught you with Lucy and used it as an opportunity to flip the script. This plot was too insane. I touched my face and said, I feel handsome in a completely brain-dead kind of way. Gideon patted my shoulder. Face it, after she manipulated you, you basically became an idiot. But Leo, seriously, whether you have amnesia or you time-traveled, I only have one thing to say, be good to Max. I can't get involved in your stuff with Lucy, but that kid is just so pitiful. Lucy's busy with work and gone for half the year. And you used to hate Max, you never paid any attention to him at all. I clenched my fists. My sweet angel Max, for the foreseeable future, please get ready to feel your father's burning love. I had just finished making my fatherly love to-do list. 2 days later, little Max went off to kindergarten. Turns out it was summer break before. Normally, a private kindergarten like Max's stays open, but most of the kids come from wealthy families, and many parents want time off to take their children on trips. Thinking of Max playing all alone with his puzzle downstairs that day, my heart soured. I decided I had to take Max out to play in a couple of days. That evening at dinner, Max sat in his chair, swinging his little legs, telling me about his day at kindergarten. After a few days together, he wasn't so scared of me anymore. At bedtime, for the first time, Max asked if he could sleep with me. He wore dinosaur print pajamas and lay obediently beside me. Daddy, tell me a story. I took the book and started making something up. A long, long time ago, there was a prince. After the story, Max smiled and said, when I grow up, I'm gonna protect Daddy. Right, since I time-traveled here, I've never heard Max mention Lucy on his own. Could it be that Lucy isn't good to him? So I cautiously asked, you don't like Mommy? Max shook his head frantically. I like Mommy, it's just he looked at me with a careful expression. The message was clear. I was the one who didn't like Lucy. That just didn't seem possible. One day, after the housekeeper took Max to school, I started cleaning out some old stuff. Unexpectedly, in the corner of a storage room, I found a wedding photo. In the picture, my face was completely blank, like a soulless puppet. Beside me, Lucy was smiling, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. It was ugly. I went to turn the photo face down, but I heard a clatter. A small box that had been tucked behind the photo fell to the floor. Curious, I opened it. Inside was Max's birth certificate and also a note I had passed to Lucy in class once, along with a love letter. It was from 16-year-old Lucy to 16-year-old Leo. In that instant, I couldn't quite place the feeling in my heart. It was like a plate of sweet and sour bitter melon. All I could taste was bitterness, sourness, and regret. This love letter was 16 years late. I stared at it for a long time, then put it back where I found it, pretending nothing had happened. At the kindergarten entrance, teachers were leading out groups of little tots. Kids seem to have a superpower that lets them spot their parents in a crowd instantly. When Max saw me, his eyes lit up, and he waddled over to me like a little duck. He looked up, his face flushed. Thank you for picking me up, Daddy. My heart instantly turned to mush. From now on, Daddy will pick you up from school every day. Okay. Can you drop me off in the morning, too? I shook my head firmly. Sorry, buddy, Daddy can't wake up that early. Just then, a little girl ran over and looked at me. Mister, are you Max's dad? I nodded. The little girl sized me up and complimented, Mister, you're really handsome. But why did you never pick Max up before? The kids in class all say you don't like him. Before I could answer, Max clutched my pant leg and said, a little angry, "Don't say that. Daddy likes me." The little girl looked at me, then at Max, completely bewildered. I quickly calmed them both down. After we got home, I saw Max was a little down, so I bought him a bunch of my favorite snacks and promised to get him a huge gift for his birthday. Max looked at me with anticipation. Yay, Mommy said she's coming back, too. I just saw the love letter today and I haven't even figured out how to face Lucy yet. And she's already coming back? That night, following my to-do list, I decided to help Max with his bath. He refused, no matter what. He blinked his big eyes and said, seriously, I have a willy, and Daddy has one, but Mommy doesn't. Besides, I'm almost a big 5-year-old. I can wash myself. I squeezed his chubby little hand. Really? It's gonna sting if shampoo gets in your eyes. And you're still just a 4.5-year-old. Little Max hesitated for a moment, then chose to accept his dear old dad's help, though his face was red the entire time. Soon it was Max's birthday. He was more excited than ever. Unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate. Just after noon, it started pouring rain. Lucy's flight was in the afternoon. Who knew if she'd make it back on time? So I called Max over from where he was staring out the window to open his presents. I'd prepared 5, hoping to make up for neglecting his birthdays before. No matter how mature he was, Max was still a kid. He was soon lost in the joy of his new toys. Lucy walked in while Max and I were zipping around in his electric toy car, laughing our heads off. Daddy, it's my turn. You said you'd only play for a little while. Hang on, buddy. Dad just needs one more minute. Hearing the door open, we both instinctively looked over. Outside, the rain was coming down in sheets. Lucy appeared out of the storm, her coat soaked through. Max yelled Mommy and ran to her excitedly, but she looked past him, up at me. Our eyes met across the room, and my heart started pounding. Even if I hadn't time traveled, it had been almost 2 years since I'd last seen Lucy. I had to admit, with her glasses on, she was ticking all my boxes. A beautiful woman, glasses, a soaked dress suit. It was everything. I snapped out of it and stammered a greeting. Lucy took off her wet coat and walked right up to me, giving me a hug. My body went stiff, but I managed to wrap my arms around her. We were legally married, after all. This wasn't taking advantage of her. She whispered in my ear, Leo, I'm home. She looked at me quizzically but didn't say anything. By the time I'd lit the birthday candles, Lucy had changed and come back downstairs. I scratched my cheek. I'd been psyching myself up to sing happy birthday, but now I couldn't get the words out. Max keenly glanced at me, then at his mom. Then he made a loud wish. I wish I could sleep with Mommy and Daddy tonight. I pursed my lips. Attaboy, Max. You're the best. But Lucy just looked at me and said to Max, wishes don't come true if you say them out loud. Her reaction completely doused my enthusiasm. I'd forgotten. There were misunderstandings between us, and Max's birth was the biggest unresolved issue of all. I've never been one to procrastinate. When Max was out of the room, I said directly, Lucy, we need to talk. The moment the words left my mouth, her face fell. I'm tired. Whatever it is, can we talk about it tomorrow? She hugged me when she walked in, and now she's giving me the cold shoulder? Later, when you're in the shower, I'm unplugging your water heater. She said we'd talk the next day, but from then on, Lucy started avoiding me. By the time I got up every morning, she'd already left for work. What time do you get up? In the coffee shop, Gideon looked at me suspiciously. I rubbed my nose. 10 o'clock. That's perfectly normal, right? Gideon asked if I liked Lucy. I took a sip of my coffee to hide my expression. The reason I agreed to date Isabel back then was because she was thoughtful, kind, beautiful, and graceful. But my feelings for Lucy were different. Gideon rolled his eyes. If you ask me, this is all Lucy's fault. If she wasn't so high and mighty, that psycho bitch never would have gotten her claws in you. He had a point. It's always better to blame others than to blame yourself. Just as I was about to keep ranting with Gideon, my phone rang. 20 minutes later, I was at the kindergarten. Reason? I got called to the principal's office. In the office, Max stood there defiantly. Another kid was crying his eyes out. The teacher told me Max had started it by pushing the other boy down. The kid had a scrape on his hand, and his parents had already been called. I asked what happened. Max looked at me with a pained expression, buried his head in my chest, and mumbled. He said bad things about mommy, and he wouldn't say sorry. Why would that kid insult my wife for no reason? Just then, the other parents arrived. Who's the little brat who dared to bully my son? It was a couple. The man was burly and glared at me. The woman was immediately furious, scooping up her son and launching into a tirade. So you're Max's father. Let me tell you, this isn't over. Who do you think you are, letting your kid bully my son? I raised an eyebrow. Max was wrong to push him, but your son was the one who started with the insults. The other kid, now that he had backup, stopped crying. His eyes darted around, and he blurted out, I didn't say anything bad. Max's mom is pretty, but she's a homewrecker and a tramp. A little kid wouldn't know words like that. He must have picked them up from the adults. Hey, little guy, did you know that when kids who say bad words go to sleep, the big bad wolf comes and bites their tongues off? The kid snapped his mouth shut. The woman's face soured. He's just a child. Why are you trying to scare him? My husband is the general manager of a big company. So what if our kid insults you a little? She shot me a disdainful look. Besides, the kid wasn't wrong. We never see her around. Who knows what kind of job she has? I mimicked her, looking her up and down. Ugly person, ugly words. I was wondering where a kid would hear such filth. Turns out there's a dog barking at home all day. Who are you calling a dog? Before I could react, she lunged forward to grab Max from my arms. You little monster. Get over here and apologize to my son. I sidestepped, and the teacher, seeing things were getting out of hand, tried to intervene. As the scene devolved into chaos, the woman saw her chance and tried to slap me across the face. Suddenly, an arm shot out and grabbed the woman's wrist tightly. Are you here to solve a problem, or to start a fight? It was Lucy, frowning, her expression grim. The man who had been so aggressive a moment ago went wide-eyed. MMS. Lou, he stammered. He quickly pulled his wife back and started apologizing profusely. Lucy said, what a coincidence, Mr. Davis. Turns out this so-called big company manager was a supplier Lucy's company was currently in talks with. He had a reputation for being sleazy, and his wife was constantly screaming and cursing at home, which was a terrible influence on their kid. Lucy raised a hand, cutting him off. Mr. Davis, that wasn't your attitude a moment ago. It seemed less like you were here to solve a problem and more like you came for the show. If I hadn't shown up, that slap would have landed on my husband's face. I hear Max pushed your son. Fine, we'll take him to the hospital for a checkup, and we'll pay for any medical bills. But before that, don't you think you and your family owe my husband and my son an apology? The two of them immediately started bowing and scraping. I didn't like them acting like that in front of the kids, so I took Max and left. When we got home, I thought it was the perfect time to talk with Lucy. She immediately said, I have to get back to the office. Not so fast. At my command, Max launched himself forward and hugged his mom's leg. Lucy frowned. If this is about a divorce, let's at least not talk about it in front of Max. I rolled my eyes, pulled her into the bedroom, and pinned her against the door. Her rescuing me like that was, I have to admit, pretty hot. I looked down, met her eyes, and whispered, Honey. Lucy's breath caught, and her face turned as red as a cooked lobster. My own face was burning. I cleared my throat twice and started explaining the whole time travel thing. After a while, she said, It's a little hard to believe, but it's a rational explanation. I noticed something was different on Max's birthday. I thought your attitude had softened because Lucy's voice trailed off. Because you thought I wanted a divorce? Yeah. Looks like I was pretty awful to you before. So what really happened with that caught-in-bed story? And Max isn't your son. He's the son of Isabel and her ex-boyfriend, Sean. She used the baby to blackmail me, and honey, couples need to be honest with each other. After I said that, Lucy defensively pushed up her glasses and spilled everything. So the word honey was like open sesame for this proud woman. From Lucy's fragmented story, I pieced together the truth. When Isabel couldn't get me to stay after the breakup, she used Max, the child she'd had with her ex, Sean, to harass and blackmail Lucy. Lucy, being soft-hearted and not wanting to cause a huge family drama, was slowly backed into a corner. At the time, my mental state was terrible because of the breakup and betrayal. Lucy chose to marry me then, partly to take care of me and partly to use the marriage to get Isabel to back off. Ms. Lou, it's getting cold. Time to make Isabel's family go bankrupt. Lucy gave me an amused look. We called the police at the time, but there was no evidence. And you denied everything. In a way, Isabel was a real talent. She managed to steal my brain without me noticing and turn me into a complete moron. My life's most embarrassing moment right there. Lucy and I chatted in the room for a long time. From me blackmailing her into buying me snacks as kids, to me breaking Max's toy car the other day. By the end of our talk that day, I still couldn't bring myself to ask her to move back into the master bedroom. Some things you just have to let happen naturally. She's my wife. She's not going anywhere. As for Isabel, before I could even go looking for her, she sent out an invitation for a class reunion in our old college group chat. She even tagged me specifically. When I saw the message, I wanted to run to the bathroom and slap myself a few times. Leo, you idiot. How did you let yourself get fooled by someone like that? If I had known, I would have chased after Lucy like crazy when we were kids. Of course I was going to the reunion, but I wasn't going alone. I told Lucy everything. She asked me what I was planning. I said, first I'll scope things out. Then it's payback time. I patted her on the shoulder. Ms. Lou, I'm counting on you to back your husband up. Lucy raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. On the day of the reunion, I had planned for Lucy and me to just pop in and leave. But the housekeeper happened to have the day off, so we had to bring Max. I figured a lot of people had probably heard about what happened between me and Isabel. Worried they might say something thoughtless, I had Lucy stay in the car with Max at first. Sure enough, the moment I showed up, a bunch of classmates swarmed me. Some were sympathetic, some were sneering. I looked at all the familiar faces. It felt like just yesterday I saw them full of life and energy, and now they were all so jaded. Thanks to their big mouths, I got an update on Isabel. Turns out my old roommate had lured her away after his family's property was demolished and they got a huge payout. Now she had her own company, and word was it was doing pretty well. After a while, Isabel and her boyfriend arrived. Looking at her now, I only had one thought. Thank God. Look at that sagging skin, those stiff cheeks, those overfilled lips. There wasn't a trace of the campus goddess she used to be. And she had the nerve to tag me? Leo, it's been 5 years, and you're still as handsome as ever. Isabel came over, putting on an act. I gave her a fake smile and said nothing, then escaped to the bathroom to call Lucy and tell her to come get me. I had zero interest in any kind of one-upmanship or drama. On the other end of the line, Lucy let out a low laugh and said she'd be right up. I had just walked out of the bathroom when a figure leaning against the wall startled me. The figure spoke. Leo, have you been okay all these years? It was Isabel. I thought someone had dragged a busted old wardrobe in front of the bathroom. When I didn't answer, she even tried to grab my hand. I felt like jumping 10 feet in the air. Stay back. I'm allergic to plastic surgery. Isabel's face twisted for a second before she recovered. Leo, are you still mad at me? I had no choice back then. I quickly waved my hands to cut her off, gave her 3 deep bows to thank her for the gift of breaking up with me. It was like a new lease on life, and then fled back to the party. I had just sat down on a sofa when Isabel followed me. Just then, a hush fell over the noisy room. Then came the whispers. Is she one of our classmates? Wow, she's gorgeous. Did we have someone like that at our school? Damn, even Isabel back in the day couldn't hold a candle to her. I followed their gazes. It was Lucy. I breathed a sigh of relief and quickly went over to take her arm. Everyone, this is my wife. Since Max was still waiting in the car, Lucy and I didn't stay long. Seeing Isabel and Lucy standing next to each other, looking like they were from 2 different generations, was something else. I sighed. Turns out there are no lingering regrets in this world. On our way downstairs, Lucy playfully asked if I had canceled my big put them in their place scene. I pretended to be a little drunk, leaned my head lightly on her shoulder, and whispered, I already won. The summer night breeze was gentle. I suggested we leave the car there and take a walk as a family. I looked at Lucy beside me and whispered something in her ear. Her eyes lit up as she turned to me, her expression exactly like Max's. I smiled, took her arm, and pointed to a public electric scooter up ahead. Honey, my legs are tired. Let's take that home. Her gentle, watery expression instantly became complicated. She glanced at my nice dress, pants, and asked, Are you sure? I blinked. Max had never been on an electric scooter before, and the wind was filled with his happy laughter. We didn't even make it a mile before we were stopped by a traffic cop. We got a $20 fine for having a passenger on the scooter. Sigh. We ended up taking a taxi home after all. A long time later, I saw Isabel again. I was out on the street with Max, getting some snacks. The fragrant smell of fried stinky tofu from a corner cart drew me in. I scanned the payment code and realized the person selling the tofu was Isabel. She recognized me, too. With a pained expression, she started rambling about how her company had tax problems. Most of her clients left, and finally, her accountant ran off with all her remaining funds. She had to close the company and was now drowning in debt. To top it off, she even tried to manipulate me again, but she no longer had the looks she used to. I fought back my disgust and said, Don't worry, I'll definitely think of a way to help you when I get home. As soon as I was out of earshot, I made a call. Hello. I'd like to report someone operating a business without a license. Watching the city inspectors confiscate Isabel's cart, my eyes welled up. Such a shame about my stinky tofu. You're feeding Max junk food again. Just as Max and I were hiding in the crowd watching the show, we were caught by Lucy, who had just arrived. I grinned sheepishly. We didn't eat. We were just watching the excitement. Max chimed in. To back me up. Yeah. Me and Mommy didn't eat any fried skewers, or grilled cold noodles, or octopus balls. That Max, smart from a young age. Lucy gave us a helpless look. Next time you want to eat something, just tell me. The food out here isn't clean. I nodded while simultaneously rattling off my order. As the city lights began to glow, the three of us slowly walked home together. Epilogue. 1 second, I was curled up in Lucy's arms, talking about having a second baby. The next, I opened my eyes, and I was back in my dorm room. Still groggy, I answered a morning call. Leo, get up. Your baby is waiting downstairs for you, and she's hungry. I jolted upright in bed. Who was that? Oh right, Isabel. Just thinking about what she looked like 10 years later made me lose my appetite for 3 days. So I rushed downstairs and, in front of everyone, dumped her. Then I called Lucy. The phone rang for a long time before she picked up. She mumbled a raspy hello and then went silent. Remembering that I had just made my relationship with Isabel official last night, I cleared my throat. Lucy. So close, yet a world away. What did you mean by that social media post this morning? Lucy's breath hitched. She didn't say anything. So proud, that one. I'm giving you one chance. Don't ask any questions. Just answer me. Do you want to be in a relationship with me? With the goal of getting married? Leo, I like you. I always have. So why did the love letter never get to me? You know about that? I knew about it 10 years later. Because that day, I overheard you in the classroom telling someone that you would never, ever like Lucy. The one time in my life I tried to be cool, and it cost me this much. Lucy, I actually time traveled from 10 years in the future. You might not believe this, but in 10 years we're married. That's right, and we have a kid. That bombshell was enough to make Lucy fly back from overseas overnight. Not only did she formally confess her feelings to me all over again, but she also rushed over to my parents' house for dinner. And so, a year after graduation, Lucy and I got married, and we took beautiful wedding photos. Gideon was my best man and wouldn't stop complimenting me. After we got married, Lucy and I both focused on our careers and weren't in a hurry to have kids. Until I turned 27. Is today the day? I whispered in Lucy's ear. I wrapped my arms around her neck. She answered sleepily, Max's birthday is today. I froze, my mind suddenly crystal clear. Lucy looked at me, a blush spreading across her face. You silly goose. There are 12 months in a year. I tried to understand what she meant with my completely melted brain. She stroked my head and smiled. Pregnancy takes 10 months. So, if fate is destined to be, the seed for our little Max was probably planted 2 months ago. 12 months later, Lucy successfully gave birth to an adorable baby boy. We named him Max Quinn. Across the river of time, through a miracle that science can't explain, again and again I found you,